I'd like to take a look at some examples of factoring trinomials. A trinomial is an expression with three terms. And when we're talking about the idea of factoring trinomials, typically we have a squared term, like x squared. We have a place where the variable is not squared at all, which just, x just appears by itself, and then a constant term. And so the variable might not always be x, we could use different letters. And A, B, and C represent numbers. So let's look at an example. So we could have something like x squared plus 7x plus 10. And if this factors, it's going to have to look like x plus or minus some number and x plus or minus some other number. Right? Because if this factors, if it splits into kind of simpler pieces, the x squared is going to come from multiplying x times x. So we can kind of think of what would happen, working backwards if we had an expression like this. We can kind of think about the process of foiling, distributing, and multiplying each of the first two terms with each of the second two terms. Well, it turns out, what's going to happen is that the x here is going to get multiplied with the x there. Whatever this number is, it's going to get multiplied with the other number. Right? And so that won't have any x's in it. So I need a pair of numbers that multiply to equal 10. Two numbers that come to mind are 2 and 5. Positive 2 and positive 5. And in fact, those are exactly the numbers that we need. Because to get 7x in the middle, I'm going to take the 2 times x and the x times 5. So if you think about the foiling process, what we would get would be x times x from the first two terms. I would get x times 5 from the outside terms, 2 times x from the inside terms, and 2 times 5 from the last terms. And so we would end up with x squared plus, this would be 5x plus 2 more x, gives me 7x plus 10. So as with factoring in general, we can always check our work by multiplying back out. The final answer, sort of the factored form of the expression that we're looking for, is x plus 2 times x plus 5. So to look at another example, a general strategy, I know that my answer is going to look like x plus or minus some number times x plus or minus some number. What I'm looking for is a pair of numbers that multiply to equal 12. So basically a factor pair of 12 that adds to equal 8. So if we look at the constant number and find a factor pair of that constant number that adds to equal 8, then that will give us the two numbers that we're looking for. Well, so looking at the number 12, 2 and 6 might come to mind, and so we end up with plus 2 and plus 6. If we check that by multiplying it out in a similar way to what happened with 2 and 5, 2 times 6 is 12, x times 6 gives me 6x, 2 times x gives me 2 more x, and so that gives us 8x, and this would be the factored form of the answer. Of course, the x times x gives me the x squared term.